As I have often mentioned, if we want to understand the stories of Jesus and how they apply to us today, then we first need to ask where we fit in the story, where we stand in the story, which character best represents us and our situation. Much depends on the answer. For example, our gospel reading for today, the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector, can be heard in two different ways depending on where we stand. If we stand with the Pharisee, then the story is a warning to us. If we stand with the tax collector, then the story offers great hope. So, where do we fit in the story? Which character represents us and our situation? Well, chances are we'd say that we certainly don't stand with a Pharisee, because down through the centuries, the Pharisee has been seen to be the bad guy in the story, the villain, arrogant and self-righteous. And I doubt very much if any of us would want to be identified with him. The tax collector, on the other hand, has often been seen to be the good guy, the hero, a sinner to be sure, but an honest, good-hearted sinner who was sorry for what he had done. And while we might take pains to point out that we're not quite the wholesale sinner he was, still, it's the tax collector with whom we stand. Or do we? Actually, the Pharisee was a good, decent man. As one commentator has pointed out, the Pharisee was genuinely religious, generous, and committed as an individual. He truly felt thankful for the life God had blessed him with and was moved to express his thanks. He gave a tithe, a tenth of his income to support the temple, and he faithfully observed the religious rituals and practices of his day. Not only that, being a Pharisee, he would have taken the commandments very seriously and would have been very committed to his family and community. He would have been committed to what we call today family values, and he would have been involved in one or more community service clubs and done his part to feed the hungry and clothe the poor. He was someone who today would have strongly supported his church and been the kind of person who does much to hold the community together. In other words, many a congregation would love to have a church full of such people. But what of his prayer? Well, was it really that bad? It was very close to the prayers of thanks you find in the Psalms. And why not give thanks for being spared a certain lot in life or certain sins? And the tax collector? Well, no matter how you cut it, the truth is that he was a louse, a creep, a crook. He was a stooge for Rome who made his living cheating his own people, the Jews. And chances are, after he said his prayer, wiped the tears from his eyes and walked out the door, he went right back to fleecing his neighbors. There's no indication whatsoever that he was changed in any way. He probably figured he had no other option but to keep doing what he was doing. And anyway, he could always pop into the temple now and then to clear his conscience. The tax collector was a compromised, certified stinker, as the commentator I mentioned puts it. And that's the shock of the story, because it was the tax collector, the creep, Jesus said, who went home justified. But why? I mean, why him and not the Pharisee? Well, because the Pharisee uses one little word in his prayer that betrays him. The word like. The Pharisee didn't thank God because God had spared him from being a thief or rogue or tax collector. He thanked God because he was not like him. Instead of having his eyes on God, the Pharisee has his eyes on the tax collector standing nearby. and he measures himself against him and is quite pleased with the difference. Instead of looking honestly at his own hardened condition, he looks at others and takes satisfaction in being better than them. He feels no kinship with them, only contempt for them. And thus he crosses the line between gratitude and self-satisfied smugness. He figures his goodness and decency gives him a favored position with God. But the tax collector looks only at himself and honestly confesses the truth of his life. He knows what he is. He knows he's an oily little man, a compromised creep who has no standing at all before God. And his only hope is God's mercy. And that's why Jesus held him up as an example, even though we don't know if he was changed or not, because he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on before God, that his only hope was God's grace and mercy, not whatever goodness he managed to have on his own. And really, that's why Jesus told the story, to shock all the good, decent people into seeing how it is with them, and with God, and with all people. And the way it is that all need God's mercy. Jesus told the story to warn good, decent people that it is God's mercy, not their own goodness or decency, that saves them. And that is the kinship all people share, the need for God's mercy. And that's what he wants good, decent people to notice. Not how unlike they are from others, but how much the same they are. So, where do you and I fit in the story? Well, a good way to answer that is to answer what kind of people we are and how we talk. The truth is, we are good, decent people. We're here in church today, and this is where you'll find us most Sundays. We give our time and energy and money and support of the ministries of the church. We feed the hungry, we shelter the homeless, we clothe the poor. And certainly we take the commandments seriously and are committed to strengthening families and guiding the young and holding communities together. But the thing is, more and more of late, the language of good, decent people has become the language of us and them. We and they. In communities and churches, in politics and religion, in neighborhoods and at the office, good people have increasingly adopted the language of comparison and talk in ways that divide and separate one group from another. More and more labels are used to identify those whom people disagree with or don't like and want to mark themselves as being different and mark them as being somehow sinister and evil, but absolutely wrong. So much conversation today is about them, whoever them happens to be. And much of the purpose of conversation is not to discuss an issue or learn something or find common ground or seek solutions, but to announce opinions, declare how wrong others are, judge others, and even proclaim contempt for them. And so people say, well, you know how they are. Or, well, you know, he's a, or she's a, and the labels and the judgments fly. When people use us, them language, they're really declaring that they are not like them, thank God. And with a Pharisee, they cross the line into a dangerous, destructive self-satisfaction and smugness. And if that's how we talk, then we stand with a Pharisee. Come under Christ's judgment, Christ's warning. Now the commentator I referred to said a stunning, telling thing. He says that if people continually define themselves by who they are not, they give a good indicator that they have no idea who they are. It seems people today need enemies in order to feel good about themselves and have identity. But their identity is that they are not like this or that enemy. They are good because others are so bad. Take away the enemy, and they're no longer sure who they are. Without an enemy, they almost seem lost and have a very difficult time declaring why they're good or what good it is they stand for. And this is especially true for Christians. I mean, again and again, Christians define themselves by what they're against, who they are not like, who is bad. And the sin of it is that when we know only who we are not, we adopt language and thoughts and behaviors that divide and hurt and destroy in the name of God. So maybe before anything else, we need to hear this story as a warning to all good, decent people, a warning that if our language and thoughts and opinions and attitudes and behavior betray a heart untouched by Christ and a self unformed by the gospel, that if we see only differences from others and not kinship with others, then surely we are lost and really don't know who we are. To know who we are, people in need of God's mercy and who receive God's mercy again and again, is to see the kinship between us and them, between us and all people. To know who we are, people who are loved by God and have their identity in God and are formed by the gospel, is to have a security in which we no longer need to label or judge or tear down, but actually build some bridges, come together and work to heal and increase hope. When, like the tax collector, we look only at our own condition, our own house, we see that no matter how different others may seem from us, we are truly very much alike in our need for mercy. As Christians, it's time we start again being who we are and proclaiming who we are. People who are gracious and merciful, people who help and heal, people who believe in the power of the gospel to overcome all things and transform this earth. People who are Christ, one to the other. Of course, none of this may apply to you. It may only apply to me. Wouldn't be the first time. So really all I can say is that if it does apply, then here it is, the warning it is, and take it to heart. Take to heart the great hope of the story. The hope of knowing that God's mercy is big enough even for the Pharisee. And just by honestly recognizing where we truly fit in the story is a major step toward God, and also toward all of them and those whom we are very much like, and with whom we can together thank God for God's mercy and love. Amen.